Think about Bitcoin today. It seems like everyone was yelling and screaming, it's over, it's done after 2017, price goes down. Everyone's watching the price, watching the price. One of the things that you did, consistently every single day was just like, you guys are idiots. Look at the development that's happening. Look at the hash rate. Just look at actually what's working here. Now that it's recovered, there was a period where everyone's like, oh, you guys are geniuses. But it seems like the mainstream has woken up to this, and the incumbents on Wall Street or other sorts of what I would consider kind of elites or the wealthy part of society, they seem to just be attacking it every day. Like, what do you think is driving that? Is it that they're scared of Bitcoin? Is it that they stand to lose a lot from it being successful? Or are they just idiots?
Depending on who it is, I bet it's a combination of all those things. The power structure as it stands today, particularly those in the political arena, the banking arena, financial system, and even in the large corporatocracy that is developing around the world, stand to lose a lot in under a monetary system that can be controlled by nobody, and that has set rules that cannot be changed. The way the structure is set up right now, the rules are very easily manipulated, and people benefit from the ability to manipulate that. Specifically, people who are close to the spigot of money creation that these central banks have power over. So that's people well connected in the financial system and the banking system, and even the investment arena via funds like BlackRock and Vanguard. So all these institutions benefit significantly from the proximity and the proximity to the monetary spigot and the ability to manipulate that in the first place. And so if we transition to a world that does not have the ability for those individuals and those entities to benefit from that function and that proximity to that function, it certainly eats away at a lot of their power. So I think, there's definitely a lot of fear involved. There's a lot of misunderstanding. I mean, there's a lot of old dogs in the traditional system. They don't want to learn new tricks. They're sort of very comfortable and happy with the way that their businesses are run and the way that they profit, and they don't want that disturbed. And Bitcoin comes in and just throws a wrench in that wheel. So I think it's a combination of many things, mainly fear, lack of education, and a bit of Ludditism, if you will.
You're a outspoken critic of the ESG movement. This is what everyone's here for. That was my most corporate way of introducing your intense hatred for what you deem as nonsense and are probably more right than wrong. Let's just start structurally. What is the ESG argument, and then why do you think that it is so misplaced or kind of inaccurate?
That's sort of the hard thing, is like to nail down exactly what their argument is outside of like virtue signaling about the environment, like social equality or whatever it may be, and governance, however they want to describe that. But again, it's, in my opinion, ESG is just an extension of the central planning and the attempt to granularly micromanage whole industries in another way. Like it just takes what the Fed is doing, trying to centrally plan these economies with the manipulation of interest rates and monetary supply, and extends it to the corporate boardroom and access to capital specifically. And so the ability to access capital will be contingent on whether or not you check off these boxes on the ESG rubric, whatever it may be. And it's very subjective. Like that's the thing that makes me extremely angry. Morality is subjective, and like one company's morals may differ than another's. And how do you have a concise ESG sort of the number of boxes to check for it? Like, you're never going to coordinate and agree on everything that the ESG crowd would like it to be. And so what really angers me about it is, I think, again, it's an extension of this push toward, they use things that are very emotional and divisive and the environment, and they use fear around the environment and climate change and the climate emergency to force people to do things. Social equality, obviously everybody is all for social equality. They don't want anybody to be racist or prejudiced or anything. And so they're like, all right, like if you're going to do that, you have to check these boxes. And then the whole governance thing, I'm still trying to completely understand what the G does, but it is tend to to force industries by way of access to capital to act in certain ways. And I would argue that the ways aren't always environmentally friendly or socially equitable, or not equitable. They don't induce social equality. And so I've been more vocal about this because the Bitcoin mining industry is something that's very obviously close to my heart as somebody who owns equity in a Bitcoin mining company that predominantly operates in oil and gas fields. Like I think the attempt by the mining industry to cater to the ESG movement by showing how much renewable energy the Bitcoin mining industry has in their energy mix compared to other industries is just a losing battle. Because at the end of the day, and this is another part of my beef with the ESG movement, is I don't think it's about the environment or being socially equitable. I think it's about control at the end of the day. And this, I think, is completely validated by the hypocrisy of the movement, particularly around the environment and the social equality. So you have this push, this massive push, and it's only getting louder and louder. And that's why I become more vocal about it, because they're just seeing everything that's being put out there in the mainstream by the political class, the banking class, the corporate class about this push towards ESG and moving our electricity production away from fossil fuels, which are extremely reliable and they're part of basically everything you touch throughout the day. There's probably 95% of the products that you come into contact throughout your day have petroleum products in them at some point. And these push towards unreliable solar and wind specifically to replace reliable baseload energies like natural gas and coal. I think it's dangerous. We're seeing it happen in California, New York, Texas, even the energy capital of the world, as they're basically forcing their economies to move to unreliable green energies, and it's making things worse off. It's causing rolling blackouts. It's increasing electricity prices, which affects the poor and minorities the hardest in this area. Those monthly electricity bills are a material part of their disposable income. And when you raise those prices, they begin to have to weigh opportunity costs. Do I pay my electricity bill, or do I send my child to daycare this week? Like those are the type of decisions that get forced on people when you force unnaturally these grids to move to unreliable electricity energy sources. And I think, again, part of the hypocrisy is, like, I'd be completely fine with the environmentalist movement and the ESG movement if they weren't such hypocrites. And their hypocrisy is acutely highlighted in the fact that they're decommissioning nuclear power plants all throughout the country and the world, even, where nuclear is arguably the cleanest and most dense energy source that we have on the planet. And yet in New York just decommissioned the Indian Point power plant on the Hudson, and only 2 months later, you had emergency alerts going out to New York City citizens that said that, hey, turn down your ACs or we're going to have like a brownout here. You just completely replaced that reliable baseload of electricity, you eliminated it and didn't replace it with energy generation that New Yorkers have become accustomed to. Similar things are happening in California, where they're decommissioning natural gas and nuclear power plants, and they obviously have had blackout problems for many years now. And they'd like to point at like people just using too much electricity, but it's like, you're not producing enough electricity because you're decommissioning this and not replacing it. And then in Texas, which has been inundated with federal subsidies for wind and solar, the market down there has focused artificially due to the subsidies, I would argue, on the production and expansion of solar and wind capacity, and neglected the weatherization of their natural gas pipelines and their nuclear facilities. And as we saw in February, that caused mass blackout too. I mean, there was a lot of failures. The natural gas lines froze. The sensors in one of the nuclear power plants went down, which took that capacity off market. But then the wind and solar, like, the wind didn't blow, and the sun didn't come out because it was the middle of winter, and that. No matter how much capacity of wind and solar you build out, like, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you're not going to be producing electricity. And we saw that earlier this summer too. It got extremely hot. It's not so pumped. You know, I mean, I just can't take logical inconsistencies. So the push towards wind specifically, it doesn't make sense for people, for places that get really hot. Like, it gets really hot in places because the wind stops blowing and the sun is out, but like the wind stops blowing and it gets really hot. And so when it gets really hot, people want to turn on their air conditioners, and they don't have enough electricity because the wind stopped blowing, which is what made it hot. Like, there's just
Marty,
so many logical consistencies.
Don't use facts and rational thought in today's world. Like, come on, man. You act like people actually care about science. What is going on with you?